It's good to be back.
It's great to be back.
It's fantastic. I was conversing with some individuals in my life not long ago, and we were talking about how do you maintain positive outlook for the future? How do you stay optimistic about things that are happening around you when there's so much bad? Even if you're not even paying attention to the news, even if you're not watching a bunch of shows that are making you blackpilled on everything, there's still this kind of draw towards despair when you go to try to buy a house, or you look at your food bill every month. It's higher every month. We talked about shrinkflation, inflation, all these different things that end up happening. It's all so discouraging.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my answer to that has always been having a plan. People, what do you mean? What's a plan? What kind of plan? And it's the reality of there's different kinds of plans.
Mm-hmm.
Having a plan for the year is a pretty big one. A lot of people don't have even that. What you want to accomplish in a year? What do you want to accomplish, where you want to be, so to speak? But then beyond that, then there's the 5-year plan.
Mm-hmm.
Next 5 years, what are you looking to change about your life? Because you can make some pretty meaningful changes in 5 years. Beyond that, a 10-year plan. It's kind of out there for a lot of people, but visualizing the world you want to live in 10 years, you can change your community, you can change the mannerisms of yourself. You can be a completely new person, and you can have completely new people around you. Sometimes literally having new people around you and growing families and whatnot, what that's going to look like. Then there's the 50-year plan. A lot of people, I lose them at this point.
Mm-hmm.
50 years, like you may not even live another 50 years.
Yeah, and you
It's
look
crazy.
at, the old people who are 80. So
Yeah.
when they're 30, they would have made these plans, and they're just kind of completely irrelevant. Like they're not doing anything to enact their will onto the world.
Yes. And then even beyond that, the 100-year plan.
Mm-hmm.
And that one, it's almost too big for people to really fathom, but like having a plan for the next 100 years for you and your family. And then, my family, we have a 1,000-year plan.
Mm-hmm.
And that one, maybe not everyone needs a 1,000-year plan. I'll concede.
Okay.
Maybe everyone doesn't need that. But the point is that having the plans, having the goals set in these different timelines, and having each one of them align with the other one helps so much to handle the despair. Because, my goal in 10 years is, to not have to worry about groceries.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you have that as a goal, you could take steps towards it. I don't mean not worrying about groceries as in like I'm not going to eat food or something,
mm-hmm.
or growing everything myself, because, I can grow some things myself. That's just really not a realistic goal to grow everything that you need yourself,
mm-hmm.
but rather be established in a certain way and then taking steps to make that establishment happen. My 50-year plan involves not just my actions, but my children's actions, the way they're going to be handling their families. And all of that starts right now. So then when I'm confronted with the, man, just got hit with $1,500 to fix my car, and I'm back to broke. It took me like 3 months to save up $1,500, and now I spent it all on my car. This is horrible. We're not getting anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It helps me to not fall into despair, to be able to go, well, hold on a second. This is bad now, and maybe it affects, my year plan, but it can't really affect my 5-year plan.
Mm-hmm.
It can't really affect my 10-year plan. And then as you mature, you learn to account for these kind of expenses because it's part of the plan, setting aside the money, working for that, and then more importantly, focusing on the relationships of the people around you to cultivate your family, your community, your church, all these things so that you have not just a support structure, but you have people who are in the same corner as you, in the same mindset as you. This is not about manipulating and brainwashing. It's about building people up with the knowledge of the truth. And that goes all the way up to that kind of 1,000-year goal of like having a particular type of nation arising. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people will listen to this and their initial question, right? How do you avoid despair, even if I'm not watching all the news and stuff? And then I hit them with this kind of explanation. A lot of times it's kind of like, oh, it's too much. It's too big. Mm-hmm. So start with the small time. You start with anyone can make a plan for the year. If a plan doesn't go well, that's not the end of the world. But making a plan for the year is as simple as looking at the various things you have going on right now. Go, at the end of the year, what do I want to have taken care of? What are big worries, frustrations, concerns I have? Start working towards those. Start now. And then when you get to the end of the year, you'll find that there is a lot less despair in general. We're drawing to the close of the year, as evidenced by the weather and such. A lot of people have, seasonal depression, frustration. It's not just that there's family getting together and some people feel left out because they're single, or some people feel like there's too much money being spent on these things. But it's true that as we draw to the close of the year, a lot of people have a feeling of not achieving anything. And I think when you set meaningful goals and then you're able to, meaningful and realistic goals, and you're able to achieve them, it helps you deal with the frustration and the despair of all the different things that are happening. Helps you kind of see above and beyond it, because every little thing that trips you up or tries to stumble you doesn't become a world-ending event. It just becomes the enemy's trying to mess with my plan.
Mm-hmm. And this is a natural progression from the concept that we talked about last episode when it comes to managing your recreation time within the next 30 minutes, the next hour, the next 5 minutes of what you're going to do with your time. When you have a plan of this is what I ultimately want my life to be like within the next hour, you know exactly where you are wanting to go, and then you will actually be able to meaningfully make steps to take that. When there's some, Chinese proverb or something, or maybe it's from Dragon Ball or something, I don't know, is that when you have a fork in the road and you ask the wise sage, which way do I go? And the wise sage asks you, where are you headed? And you say, I don't know. Then there is no correct way. There is no incorrect way. A sailor with no destination has no favorable winds.
Yes.
Has no unfavorable winds. So in this sense, when you're not taking a 1,000-year plan, a 10,000-year plan, if there are going to be 10,000 more years, or if it's a 50-year plan or a 5-year plan, if you don't have any greater goal, any greater ideal of where you want things to be in the future, then you'll never even know that it's possible to take steps to that path, because you don't even know that that path exists. When it comes to a 50-year plan, that's very reasonable in terms of you don't even need to think about building any structures that are outside of you, because you're going to be alive for 50 years. And you may not be the one making the decisions that you want to happen, but you can absolutely influence your children to have them structure their lives and structure their family the way that you want to, in a way that is not currently done by society. That is something that is totally reasonable to do. And anything that is sooner than a 50-year plan becomes more and more reasonable to do over time. A 10-year plan, a 5-year plan, a 1-year plan. When you have an idea of where you want to go, then you can actually take steps towards finding the wind that favors you.
Yeah, it really makes sense in that regard. I love that proverb. Actually, I haven't heard that one before, which surprised me. I thought I would have heard that one. It's a really great one. When you are setting out these plans, what I have found is a lot of people, when they first make their first 5-year plan, it's either way grandiose, like, oh, I'm going to be financially independent or something like that.
Maybe a super millionaire. I don't know any women, but I'm already going to have 3 kids in 5 years.
Yeah, it's like, that's kind of difficult. But one of the things that I have noticed is that when people get past that initial, like, oh, I'm just going to set some goals and see if they work out, once they understand what can happen, you start to get different timelines. So if you're thinking about the age of your children now, and you're thinking, oh, well, in 20 years, I want them to be in this position, that position, or the other position, suddenly it comes to light that they have needs that maybe you haven't thought of. You mentioned this before. The 2 biggest things that assail people, especially young people today, is what job am I going to work and who am I going to marry? If you can help alleviate and remove that, then all of a sudden you end up with children who are far more powerful than those around them. And this, in turn, becomes power for your family, power for your clan. You can exercise your will much easier. And so now, understanding, okay, I want my kids to be married by the time they're 25. Not in the sense like I would force them to be married, but if they want to be married, you want to, especially your sons, daughters, I think should get married much younger than this. But for your sons, if they're ready to be married by that time, meaning, they want to and they have desire, it shouldn't be your lack of planning that holds them back, your lack of networking, your lack of bringing those kinds of people into your life.
It shouldn't be an idea of, oh, they're just at this stage. Now that they're at this stage, we can take the first brainstorming ideas of thinking about this as it just becomes a problem. You always want to be tackling things before they become a problem.
Yeah. And so in that regard, once you kind of get past the nuance of, oh, a 5-year plan is difficult or whatever, or maybe your first 1-year plan, you go through it and you realize, oh, some things are unrealistic to plan or whatever, then when you have your 50-year plan, all the other plans, the shorter term plans, have these tiny little goals in them. For instance, if in 50 years, I want to have, marginal control over my township, which is probably possible for me because I live in a rural area, as people may know.
Yes.
And so they can go, oh, all right. Or if that's kind of your 50-year plan, then you can go, well, inside my 10-year plan then is finding families who have similar mindsets, similar theology, who are going to have children the age of my children, who can be strong allies in this. And I sound a lot like medieval French, king at this point. But that's the mindset that you have to have. Who are my children going to marry? If you're just going to let them marry willy-nilly, that could be taking the power that comes from you, your children, and literally just sidetracking it over here, not building that towards your actual goals. And so then your 10-year goal has this other thing in it. And so then you have smaller goals that fit inside that. Oh, in the 5-year plan, then, okay, I need to be visiting this person I heard about, that person that I heard about, making connections with this person or the other. And then your 1-year plan becomes, well, next month I have to go and visit this family or this person that I heard about. I have to make the effort to make the connection. And it gives you focus and determination throughout your year. And when all that is in place, the frustrations and the assailments and the failings don't become a problem anymore. Something that my father has talked about is how many different people he's tried to make community with. And those people are just not interested. But it's almost like sales in the numbers. If you are just trying to sell a product, you got to talk to as many people as possible. Likewise, if you're trying to find the people who kind of have the similar thought to you, you have to take the time to get to know them. And I don't mean, just talking to them on the phone, getting to know them once. You have to spend a sizable amount of your time and energy kind of coming alongside them, figuring out what they're about, and seeing if your families are families that can hang out together. Regardless of whether your children can even marry each other, you still have to do the diligence of checking in on this family and see, are these people that I really need to be having and forming relationship with? And when they're not, it's wasted time. It can be super easy then to feel like, oh, I have no friends, I'm so dejected. When the reverse is the way you should look at it, is I've investigated 20 or 30 people, and I have these 2 people who are really close friends of mine. What a victory. I'm achieving my goals. I'm getting there. As opposed to, oh, I know I should go to, as an 18-year-old, right? I know I should go to blah, blah, blah's party because then I could meet some people there. Then you go to the party, don't talk to anybody, have a horrible time.
You talk to the one person that you already kind of have a connection with.
Exactly. And you go home and you're just like, this sucks. I'm depressed.
This is a waste of time. I'm never going to do these things again.
Exactly. Yeah.
So in that sense, it's also just, if you think about the extreme example the other way of, you and a woman marrying when you're 35, you already have so much of a idea of how you want your life to be structured, and you've already grown so much away from each other. So you're a lot more calcified in terms of being confident in who you want to be. Whereas you'll see this a lot in, various forms of media, and it's perfectly fine there, to where, 2 families know each other, or 2 people know each other when they're very young. And then that way you can influence and grow with those people and have a common shared connection that you never otherwise would have been able to have. So when you are looking for a potential family to engage yourself with, and your children are both 6, 7, 8 years old, and then all of a sudden the other family does something that you say of just like, oh, I thought we agreed that we weren't going to do this thing, what's up with that? And then all of a sudden you can actually influence these things in real time before, so that way you are creating something that is impossible to find outside. It is, in this sense, this is something that I talk about with us as a conceptual friendship, is that out of every friendship that is here, we are the only connection that is purely voluntary, in that for pretty much everybody else, it's either, being a sibling with somebody, or that this is just a natural consequence of living close together with each other, or this thing or that thing, to where it's just kind of something that happened by happenstance. Whereas our relationship was purely voluntary, like me actively coming out here and you actively inviting me out here was something to where the type of relationship that we have is a lot stronger because of that. That's voluntary. But our relationship still pales in comparison to if we grew up together.
Yeah.
Because you can never recreate the relationship of growing up with somebody and influencing each other in ways to where that is a temporary window that once it's gone for good. And the only thing that you can do when you don't have that is to be active in creating that for your children.
I think that's 100% a great analogy. All the people that you bring with you when you come and visit here are people that I'm interacting with because they're with you. Not to put anyone down, but it's just how it is. Likewise, everyone you're interacting with here is just because they're here, right? And so there's a kind of separation in the terms of relationship. And I think it's an excellent way to, cast the huge shadow of the formative years. When I was growing up, I had some friends who were close to me during my formative years. And the interesting aspect to that is that I ended up breaking with them because I moved halfway across the country. So then a lot of these guys who I grew up around and with, I ended up having very little contact with. And they moved in different spheres. All these guys kind of went different directions. And that's almost normal in the sense that once we're all spread apart, we're a part of new friend groups, we're a part of new communities. We have to kind of find our own little center in different ways. But one of the guys who wasn't necessarily my best friend, he and I were on pretty rocky terms, but I grew up with him. When he moved to my part of the country, didn't even hesitate to give me a call and be like, hey, we should catch up. And that's just unbelievable. No one else, even you and I, there's a huge vetting process in terms of like, okay, I've known this guy for like a couple years online, and then, okay, talk to this guy a little more seriously, check this thing, check that thing. Whereas here's someone I hadn't seen in 20 years, but he just sends me a text. Can I come hang out for a bit? And it's like, absolutely, yeah. Why? Because we have that formative connection and formative bond. Even though he and I are not as close as you and I would be in terms of what our goals are and our alignment, it's just built in, hardwired, because during those years, he and I hung out together vaguely through like different groups. That's how strong those kind of bonds are. And it's a pity that we don't have those with the people we end up spending the majority of our life with. You can imagine having a formative bond with your spouse would just be unbelievable. And there are some people who have that. One of my very good friends has this exact experience with his wife. And it's like their relationship looks so completely different from anything else for that reason. They have an additional bond, really, that's going with them. And that's just incredible. So, excuse me. So looking to the future, you go, how can I provide that for my children? So my children are going to be so strong in their friendships, going to have such diehard friends that they're going to be much, much stronger and less assailable than I am. That is an excellent goal that you can set as a 50-year goal. Even if that's it, just when I am 50 years from now, I want all my kids to have rock solid relationships, community, things maybe that I didn't have growing up, and totally attainable. But then you have to walk that back. Okay, so what are you doing in the next 10 years to promote that?
What are you doing in the next month? Because there could be a gathering that might have a potential option, and then you can either take that or you can not take that. You could go out of your way to make sure that this thing can happen, and then maybe something happens out of it, maybe something doesn't, but you'll never know unless you actually realize that and enact your will upon the world, which is just in general, people always take the easiest path. And the easiest path now is to do essentially what the world is doing, which is where you move halfway across the country to go to school and you completely remove yourself and divorce yourself from the people that you did have connections with. And it's almost just taken in a completely flippant manner, which is why you need to take the extra steps to actually make sure that this thing happens. And once you actually have it as a goal, it's not that difficult. The only thing that's difficult is actually making the decision to do it.
One of the things I've noticed, and I've had critiques of different people who I have been in contact with over the years. I've reached out to innumerable people throughout my 20s as kind of like a olive branch of, I have a huge network of individuals. Come, spend time with me and network with all the people that I know and find someone who is like you. It's a thing that, my dad has had a heart for people in this regard, and I do too, where it's like, I have a large circle of people being established that I can contact, a larger circle of individuals that, I get invites to these events. And so many people, especially young men, will be like, oh, that sounds great. Maybe I can get into some of these circles. They go to one, maybe 2 events with me. And then the next time they're just like, yeah, well, I'm not really getting anything out of like hanging out with your people, so I'm out. And something I appreciate about you is how many times you're just like, okay, let's go. And absolutely throwing yourself out there in a, not a flippant manner, but a very, decided manner of, okay, I'm at this place. I'm going to try and find people that Starrman doesn't know. Like, this is Starrman's group of people. Nah, this is going to be my group of people before it's over.
Yeah.
And that's so the attitude you need to have. And if you're a young man and you have a friend who's like a socialite, maybe hang out with him, because he may not be exactly your type, but you can utilize that individual to find more and more people, to cast a wider and wider net that you're going to build your community on. And if you're interested in anything longer than, a 6-month plan, which a lot of people don't have more than 6 months planned, if that, you do need to get out there and start connecting with people. And even if it takes 3 or 5 or 10 years to build a friendship, it's worth it if the result at the end is that your children are more secure in this community that you've created around them. We were talking about how, athletically speaking, or in most cases, all of the effort or the learning is front-loaded. Whatever it is, learning a language or learning athletics, 80% is up front and then the back end. Whereas friendships are like the reverse of that. You have to get through the bulk of like 80% of kind of not a lot of just like yes, no stuff before you get to actually getting a huge benefit out of it. And I think that's discouraging to a ton of people.
Yeah, it's that kind of difference in the slow burn. Like, there's a family here who talking with them and how they interacted and how they got to know your family, and it's just like, oh, it took them forever to actually sort of get past that initial vetting process, because there is a just general idea that the people that you are around are going to influence you, and you want to keep that sort of, try to understand people, but then also know who is going to be good and who is going to be negative for you, which does come from the interaction, and that does come from exactly what you're saying, that it is a slow burn and then it becomes exponentially better. To where you initially have the relationship, you initially kind of gauge, okay, what is this person like? And then you see more ways that they handle problems, the way that they handle conversations, which is something that takes a long time to get. And then you understand who they are more. And then you can, this will also just go into the point that the more that you do try to build these connections, the more that you do try to find like-minded people, is that you will gain a much stronger idea of who you want to be and what you want out of your 50-year plan, that you can adjust things over time based on, oh, hey, this family does things a particular way. This wasn't something that I was super thinking about, but now I'm just like, okay, this is definitely something that I want to bring on board into my 50-year plan.
Yeah, I think in that regard, you can be kind of blind to yourself. We talked about in many past episodes about the solo guy, has no friends, no social group to speak of, or maybe just chronically online. It's like, this guy has no grounding center. He has no one to look at him and go, whoa, what is going on here? And when you hang out with these other families, particularly if you go into their homes, getting invited into some of these people's homes, whether they're young men, because I hang out with young men and I hang out with more established families, you can go into the home, and even if it's a young guy, I've been to some of these guys' homes where I'm like, oh, wow, there's something I could learn about this person. They structure their stuff in a certain way. They've got a certain concept going on. And for, the same thing is true with some of these more established families. Sometimes you go in there, you go, wow, why doesn't my home feel like this home? How can I get that? And the answers are never simple because it requires looking at yourself and going, ooh, yeah, I'm doing something that I wasn't concerned about, but now I see there's a way this can play out where I can have this other thing that I do want. I have to change this little thing here or this little thing there. So you're refining yourself, and that's part of building that community. As you find people who have already walked a little further than you in certain regards, you can go, oh, yeah, this makes so much sense now. I don't have to think about or worry about this myself. I can literally just copy and paste what they're doing, put it in my own life, and then bang, it's ready to go. Because whatever you do, understand that we all have the same time in a day. So if someone else says, oh, we do this thing, and your response is, I don't have time for that, just remember they structured their life so that they would have time for this particular thing. We talked about this in terms of gym, but it's the same with devotional. It's the same with whether you want your family to watch movies or sing songs. I know plenty of families like, oh, I don't have time to sing or learn an instrument. But they do watch a lot of movies. And there's nothing wrong with that inherently. But if your excuse is, oh, I would love to do this thing, but I don't have the time, just remember the other people that are doing it right now have the exact same time. So literally copy and pasting is a good way to go, oh, this is the block of time they use to develop this thing. I'll just cut it out of their life, find out where it fits in mine. If it doesn't, I got to cut something else out and put that chop block in there, and boom, you have now that thing.
Yeah, this is something that I've had multiple experiences of people saying this exact same thing to me when I was younger. And then at the time, obviously didn't get it because I was a young guy who wasn't really sure exactly what my life was going to be like. Where, in this specific example, it's getting onto a sports team. Is that a lot of coaches of the football team in high school would be like, hey, you should join the team. And I'm just giving the response of, I just don't really have the time for it. Like, I got martial arts, I got this thing, I got that thing, and I just don't have time. But that is just a very defeatist mindset of essentially just closing yourself off to something. And then I was given the response multiple times of, you have the time, you just don't want to make it. Or that, you can just choose to make the time.
Which just infuriates young guys.
Yeah. It's the ultimate, your excuse isn't real, which it isn't real.
It's not, yeah.
It has not been real, and it never will be real. So in that sense, it's everything that will be in life does have that level of sacrifice, and that if you do see some kind of established family or some single guy who has something that you want, then understanding that they are making those sacrifices. And if this is something that you actually want, then you do have to structure your life in a certain way. If you see somebody who's really in shape in exactly the way that you want to be, they're making a lot of time out of the week to work out. They're eating particular ways. They're doing this thing. They're doing that thing. And these are sacrifices that they're making. And when you want a particular thing, then you have to understand that this is how I'm going to have to structure my life if I want this, which is also just the value of talking with so many people, is that you can get an actual real life example of how you would want to structure this. Whereas if you never interact with somebody who is really in shape, then you might have the idea and you might intellectually know that, oh, I need to get in shape. But then you're like, I don't really have time to do this, or, oh, there's this thing or that thing. And then you see somebody who, works just as hard as you in terms of they do the same things that you are using as excuses. Like, oh, I need to spend time with my family. But then these people are spending just as much time with their family, and they're getting this workout in, but they're sacrificing this other thing. So the excuse that you're using is not valid in this situation. And getting that perspective is also just another way of keeping you honest, of actually seeing how people are doing things in their real life.
I remember a couple episodes ago, I brought up a guy who was in one of my friend groups who decided he was going to get fit.
Mhm.
And when he was giving me kind of his workout breakdown, and I'd been doing it for about 6-7 months, was seeing results, was really happy. He was getting really, really into calisthenics though. And so he was like passing on calisthenics workouts to me. And I was like, well, I don't exactly have the equipment for that, necessarily. And he's like, well, you don't have to do what I do. And I'm like, okay, but like, where should I look? And I don't know, what he told me was, start looking around for someone you want to look like or be like or have the abilities of, and just copy every single thing they do.
Yeah.
If they eat chicken and rice, you're eating chicken and rice.
Mhm.
And it's like, that is a super good kind of like late at night, follow the taillights in front of you mentality.
Mhm.
That's sometimes really, really good.
Mhm.
Because if it's late at night and you're on the road and you can't see the road, the taillights in front of you are likely to be pretty accurate.
They're not crashing in front of you.
Yeah,
So if you just follow them, you're not going to crash.
exactly. And it's the same thing here. Find someone who has what you want, has the abilities and this thing. And, at this point is when some actually guy is going to be like, what about genetics? I can't help you.
Yeah.
Like, no, you don't have everyone's genetics, but you're going to get as close as possible if you do whatever it is that person does.
And this is also another thing, is that when you are building these relationships earlier on, and then building these relationships earlier on with your family, you'll notice that there are a whole bunch of people who don't have great genetics, and their finished product is like something that is, top 1%, like really amazing stuff. And if you just met them right at the jump, then you would think, oh, they've always been this person.
Mm-hmm.
But then you don't see all of the work that has gone into that, to where they have not made excuses for their poor genetics, and they've done something despite this like potential like downside. Like somebody that I know quite a bit, like really heavy in terms of just very, very dense, and is on the shorter side, and so doesn't have a very ideal body for running, but then just does run at an incredible pace, and is very, very competent with that. And while it's not the super ideal thing for them, in that, a lot of the other people that you're seeing who are going to be successful in running may have the ideal starting point, the ideal genetics, the ideal body type. But then you see somebody like him who is very successful at this despite all of these downsides. And then you can understand, looking at the process from the start when he wasn't running, and then seeing all of the ways that he's gone through this, and all of the challenges and problems, and talking about these things, and really getting an in-depth dive into the process that creates the finished product, that allows me to understand how much that excuses aren't real.
I didn't know you knew Rudy.
Yeah. Rudy is a great example. Movie with the Samwise Gamgee actor from Lord of the Rings, where it's based on a true story, but fake story, because all true stories are fake stories.
Yeah, it's fake.
But just the idea of that is one of the most like wholesome stories, and it is just the idea of the 5'5" guy, not very athletically talented, but his number one goal is to play for the Notre Dame football team, which in America, the most important American institution is college football.
Yeah,
by far. It is what so much of society is built around, and you really wouldn't notice this. Not only just if you're not an American, you don't understand. Like 8 out of 10 of the biggest stadiums are college football stadiums, not even NFL.
And then just also like so much of like doctorate research or medical research is literally just tailored towards athletes, specifically college athletes.
Yeah, because the scientists are in the college, and then they do their testing on these people. Like, what Mike Israetel did is, tested these 4 different teams. That is an example of the poor science, but, still taking it for what it is. But essentially, just going back to Rudy, he doesn't have any of the genetic qualities, but is still just has that mindset and has the ability to push through. And his ultimate goal is just, what can I do within the capabilities of what I have to give as much value as I can to the team? Because this is something that is super important for me. And even within that movie, just him getting into Notre Dame as a school in the first place, because he's never going to get an athletic scholarship,
Mhm.
and he's also not that smart of a guy.
Yeah.
So him having to, beg a priest to go to the small little Catholic school that is right next to it, and then try really, really hard to get super good grades, despite not having, good math skills, to get that, and then to, get a janitor position on the field to just get exposure to the team and the environment, and then eventually taking that risk of, directly telling the coach, despite being not in great shape, not a super prime specimen athlete, of just like, hey, I'm going to play for your team. And if you never make that leap to just say, hey, big coach that has something that I want, I'm going to play for your team. Then if you never take that risk, then you're never going to get any reward from it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the Wayne Gretzky quote, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, which is, we have mixed feelings about that particular one. But in this case, it's very much true. If you just sit back and say, well, I don't have the genetics, I don't have the predisposition to do whatever it is that, I want to do, or to be the person I want to be, then you're guaranteed to never be that person. Whereas if you just say, yeah, I'm going to do everything to be that person, two things will happen. Either eventually you'll come up against a priority that's more important than the thing you want, in which case you'll be able to go, I'm switching everything to this other thing. You can literally just back out and be like, you know what? Actually, I found something more important. Or you're going to achieve that thing. That's basically the only two outcomes. And this is something that is kind of big in that, last podcast talked about me wanting to go into specific fields and then like finding out there's roadblocks there. Well, it wasn't that, it's too hard for me. It's that I actually found something I value more than the field, something I want to do more. And that's always how you should look at these things, is not, I got stopped by blah, blah, blah. Instead, be honest with yourself and say, no, I gave up. And if you gave up for no reason, that's lame. But if you gave up for a reason, that's legitimate. That's a good thing to recognize. Like, I wanted to be the absolute best, trap shooter in North America. But then I found out that I have to invest all my time into shooting trap. And I actually want to spend that time with my family. Valid. That's valid to just be like, you know what? I'm just going to let that dream go because I actually want to spend time with my family.
Yeah, and even if you quit for no reason, being honest with that is way better than quitting for no reason and then not being honest about it.
Yeah.
So in this sense, it just ultimately all comes down to just being honest with yourself and being in the if you're not honest with yourself, then you're never going to be able to really enact anything, because you don't really know where you're actually at. And this also just goes into, with what we were saying before, is that, you look at some kind of fantasy or some kind of fiction, even the lower tier people that are the equivalent of somebody who has just, a worse luck of the genetic draw, they still have the ability to enact their will on the world. Current world we live in today, even the higher tier people, the people that do have all of these things, aren't making those choices to directly ask for what they want and to directly say, hey, you're doing this thing, I want to be a part of it. And so in that sense, even when you do have the worst luck of the draw on an absolute level of what you're fully capable of, just taking that leap and showing that you have a deep care for this and that you're serious about this is going to get you infinitely farther than somebody who has way more potential, but they just don't actually do it. Because if you're not actually doing something, it doesn't matter what you're capable of.
Yeah.
Which is the common problem that a lot of people have on the other side. It's a problem that, I've had, to where I was just always kind of the best person in martial arts. Every tournament that I would go to, just win every event. I was just always the best person in my particular, any kind of martial arts class I would go to, just always picking things up the easiest, without really putting in any effort. And so in that sense, it's the kind of the gifted trap that's always talked about, is that, never really learning how to put in that effort and to be more active in taking what I want. And so in that sense, that is the other side of the trap, is that it doesn't matter one way or another what your capability is, whether you're low capacity or high capacity. It does not matter unless you actually take the steps to going to that party, to talking to that family, to interacting with this person, to actually create the life that you want to live.
And this is really tying it all back to the concept of making a plan. Is you have to be kind of honest with yourself with what you actually want. So many people will look at life, and if you're immature, and I mean that in the most genuine way, you're not matured. The most common thing that I hear is, "Oh, I just don't want to have to work." That's a big goal for people. And the reality is, you are created for work. So you need to kind of get rid of that. There's a difference between not liking what you do and just not liking doing anything at all that's not explicitly your will. I remember having a discussion with a guy who was in a position, and his, kind of argumentation was, nobody does anything they don't want to do. Because if you don't want to do it, then you wouldn't have done it.
Mm-hmm.
In response to me kind of being like, no, people do things they don't want to do to get the goals they want. And he's like, well, then you want to do the thing. And it's almost a semantic back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
You can take either one of these views, but the reality is, whichever concept helps you to actually do those things which are difficult, which might not be particularly enticing, whether you simply think about the larger goal you're going to attain and then that motivates you to do it, or you go, I'm just going to go through the thing I don't want to do to get to the other thing. Both of these views are acceptable, but you can get bogged down with all these different thoughts and processes. Oh, well, I can't be motivated because I just don't want to do it. I'm not like you because you want to do it and I just don't want to do it. Well, do you want the results? Then you need to mature and understand that the results come through actual practice and repetition. That I don't fear the swordsman who's practiced 1,000 moves once. I fear the swordsman who's practiced one move 1,000 times. And it's the same thing with everything. I don't fear the powerful family that has 1,000 descendants that are all in different things and different thought patterns. I fear the one that has, 50 descendants who are all on the exact same page, who are all focused on the same thing. And this is why unification of family religion, family theology is so important, not getting divided over silly things and having valid doctrine. And I'm using doctrine here in the total sense, whether you want to talk about doctrine in a religious sense or just doctrine in a family dynamic. There's a family I know who has this, they're not particularly religious, but inside their family, they're like, we don't do the homosexual thing. That's not a family goal. That's not something we participate in. And the family is somewhat unified in that, so that there's no thought of I'll be accepted if I'm this thing or that thing. And that actually helps people understand the boundaries and the limitations of what they can do and still remain a part of their family. Whereas if you're in the culture of confusion, as in today, where you can be everything and also nothing, then there's no acceptance. There's no boundaries, who gets rewards, who doesn't get rewards. It's all just spread out and completely useless. It's just entropy at its worst state.
Mm-hmm. So this goes back into what we were talking about a couple episodes ago, of the idea of that limitations breed creativity. Yes. When you only have 5 tones that you could use maximum to make music, you are going to make much better music because you actually, like, the limitations that you have gives you, it eliminates 99% of things that you possibly could do, so that it's much more limited. And this is the exact same thing with families and the doctrine that you have. When you give, with the 2 things that we're talking about, of who you are going to marry and what you're going to do for work. When you are in the modern society, when it's, oh, you can be whatever you want to be, or, oh, like, you want to go to Thailand and find somebody, like, go ahead.
Love is love or something.
Yeah. To where it's just the options are infinite. That's where, analysis paralysis comes from.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you don't have any structure, so you have no idea where you want to go, and you don't want to make the wrong choice, and you have the possibility of doing every choice. So then all of a sudden you just never really find something that because you have no favorable winds, because you don't know where you want to go. Whereas when you limit the options of what is a possibility of something to do, let's say in this sort of family planning dynamic of what we're saying is that there are 20 families that you have a very strong relationship with, and you know them for a while, and you regularly hang out with them at least once a year. Then all of a sudden that limited pool makes it infinitely easier to make a choice, and that choice is going to be in a state that is going to be infinitely better than any choice that could be gotten from the outside world, because one, you guys have grown together, but then also it's already been filtered out to where these are already people that match so many of the things that you and your family have agreed upon as good doctrine. And then so it's just infinitely easier to make that choice.
Yeah, I think one of the kind of points that illustrates this really well is the common trope of girl grows up in small town, has like her boyfriend or whatever, leaves, goes to college, breaks up with her boyfriend to go to college, has, a bunch of boyfriends in college, gets, corrupted, so to speak, comes back to the small town for like a certain amount of time and falls for that boyfriend again. It's like, oh yeah, I went through the whole world and found out you were the best.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have to go through the whole world.
Yeah.
You could have just stayed home. And so shortcutting that for your children so that they don't have to experience like, oh, go out there and find somebody. It's like, no. I've actually kind of curated a list of people who are acceptable, who are going to be, useful and have mindsets. And so then even the worst possible decision is still one that's like really good. Like even the worst of the worst, so to speak.
Yeah, the worst of the
group.
worst is going to be a C tier option.
Yeah.
Versus, the greater world where the majority of options are F tier options.
Yeah. And so in that regard, it's like you have to kind of take control of this. I have an anecdote that happened to me actually not that long ago, I think a couple days ago. So I'm at a coffee shop with my family, and we're hanging out, and this particular coffee shop has a really nice couch. And whenever I go there, I'm always just wait for people to get up, and we just pack the whole couch.
Mm-hmm.
And we're sitting there drinking our stuff, and this older gentleman comes up. He must have been 60 or something like that. He comes up to me, and he's like, oh, that's beautiful children you have, blah, 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 and a bunch of small talk. And then he's like, yeah, I had, a little baby 28 years ago, or 36 years ago, I think is what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And then he like pulls out his phone and shows me a picture of his now adult daughter.
Mm-hmm.
It's clearly like a book or a book signing thing where she's like holding up a copy of the book, presumably that she wrote, and she's smiling. And the book was something like bowling yourself up by your bootstrap or some silly thing like that.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, a pretty woman. She's, 36, so she's probably not as pretty as she was when she was 18. And then the guy just turns to me and he's like, yeah, I kind of hope that she would give me a little grandbaby, but it's not in the cards. And, I'm just kind of like, I'm really sorry about that. Didn't say that, but I'm just kind of like not sure what to do. And then he hits me with, yeah, she married a guy that has a 6-year-old. He's now 15. And, I guess that's okay.
Yeah.
And like the light in his eyes just kind of like dying a little bit. I'm just like, I feel so sorry for this guy, but he also set it up. And since he didn't have a plan for his daughter and for like her marrying somebody else made a plan for her when she went to college, presumably when she was writing her book. Somebody else was making all the plans for how her life was going to go, and it didn't line up with what he wanted in the end. And it's like, well, if you'd made a 50-year plan back when you were having kids, this would still be inside of that. You'd still like know where you are, and she would have maybe known the expectation you had for her. Now she's just like, I don't want to have a kid because it would like devalue my stepkid or something. And it's just like, well, there's a kind of a genetic dead end.
Yeah, because it's also that if given the option, if given the structure, that probably would have been what she would have even wanted. It might even be what she wants now, but just can't necessarily have that thing, which is also just going back into, if you don't exert your will upon the world, not just the world, but going deeper into the thing that you have the most control over outside of yourself, which is your family. If you don't exert your will upon your family, the world will exert its will upon your family. So in that sense, you, when you don't make a 50-year plan, there's going to be a 50-year plan made for you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you decide that, then you just have to be okay with the consequences. But that also just goes back into the idea of you just ultimately just have to be honest about what is going to happen. If you do give ultimate freedom and you give absolutely zero restrictions as to what is okay, what is not okay, then, and having no discrimination in that sense, then whatever the result is going to happen is something that you're just going to have to accept. And when you just aren't honest, then that's just always going to be the situation that you're in, is you're going to be regretting it, but then you also can't even be honest about your regret.
Yeah.
Because it's just, you don't even have the idea that there was something else possible. In the same way that you didn't plan anything for your kid, you didn't plan anything for yourself. And then so whatever the consequence is for your family's life, that's also something that is a consequence for your life.
Yeah, and like you say, you kind of have to be okay with that. You make that bed and you sleep in it. Failure to plan is just a plan to fail. You're not doing anybody any favors by saying go do whatever you want to do, because there's kind of a falsehood that the world is stagnant and neutral and we interact with it, but it's not true. Even if it was true at any point in history, it's not true now. Babylon enacts its will and fights against us daily. It strives every day to capture and to control and to make its will effective in people's lives. If you think you're doing your family a favor by not discriminating, by not saying, look, this is what we do, this is what we're about, then they're not going to go and find their own way. They're going to go find Babylon's way. And realistically, that is your fault. Too many people grow old with regrets about, oh, I just didn't spend enough time with family. And when you talk to those people, you find out that the regret isn't actually that they didn't spend time with family, because they still don't want to spend that much time with their family. Their frustration is that their family is so completely devoid of any similitude to them and to their ideas and to their goals. And they just assume it's because they didn't spend enough time with their family, which is true. But the bigger thing is that the time they did spend was not of good quality. They did not instruct. They didn't give the plan. They didn't say, here's how things are going to go. And to be upset when a plan you didn't make doesn't work out makes no sense. So then you just kind of have to hide the pain herald like the whole time. Like, I guess this is okay. I didn't think I would be okay with this, but I have to because I didn't set any other parameters. So I'm just stuck.
Yeah, and this is this one idea that was floating around recently is that at some point with Disney Pixar movies, there was this shift to where every single movie got written by people who went to therapy way too much. And every movie is just, my family is wrong. I'm proving my family wrong, and that's the outcome. Whereas classically, you see movies where greatness is achieved. It is something to where, even if, my father dies, I'm still going to do the best to enact my father's will. And there is going to be that legacy, because nothing great has been built in one generation. It is the idea that if you want greatness, if you want to build something that is lasting, the most effective way to do that is to do it multi-generationally. It doesn't matter how many books you write and how many book signings you go to and how many shelves and Goodwill bins that your books end up in 50 years. Having somebody that you have directly from the beginning of life given the direction and given the idea of, here is the will that this book might lay out everything, but here is the will that I could have written in a book, but I'm going to give it to you. Then all of a sudden that is significantly more real, because it goes back into the idea that building a friendship when you're young and able to actually fundamentally change who you are as a person in a much stronger way, doing those things when young is going to be way more efficacious, and is also something that can growth begets growth.
Yes.
Doing it one time, then keeping that strong family structure to where they understand that these things are important, and understanding that we have a very particular way of doing things. When you have a particular way of doing things and you're very confident in it, then that is going to be something that lasts. Whereas you see families, see a lot of families that have this idea of, they have good values and they have a good way of doing things, but they're still of the idea of still just giving a lot of freedom. And in that sense, it's way more common to see those people kind of fall out of the ultimate family structure, because there's not the idea of, hey, this is something that we are strict in and we want to build to last and we want to maintain this. If it's just, oh, hey, they're an adult, they can make all of their own decisions, they can make all of their own choices, then it's essentially setting people up to get influenced by sources that you never would let influence them otherwise. Because you would never teach your kids the same things that Babylon is teaching them. You would never give them the same experiences that Babylon is teaching them. The the boomers sending their daughter off to college, if they knew what was going on, they would never say, okay, I'll let you go here and do this thing. Never do that in a million years. But the action that they're taking through inaction is causing that. And the only reason that they're okay with it is that dishonesty, that disconnection of, oh, it's just, their own choice, which is just in general a thing of all of these sort of Enlightenment ideals and modernist ideals. You do have to be steadfast in defending yourself against them carte blanche, that they cannot have any room to exist, because any little inch that you give to any of these ideas, it will take a mile out of you.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest idioms we have to break too is the idiomatic thought of cycles. I talked about this a couple episodes ago regarding history, but it's true here in that people will be despaired over building a family that is strong, that lasts generations, because they go, oh, well, cycles, because weak men beget the hard times, beget strong men, blah, blah, blah. That's just not true. It's just not how it functions. When you build something strong, it takes a lot to tear it down. And the realization you need to have is that we have been torn down time and time again. It takes a lot of effort. So building something strong is what Babylon fears. That's why they say there's futility in it. It's just like Peter Rabbit in the briar patch. Babylon sits there and goes, oh, please don't throw me in the briars. That would be the worst thing for me. And then you throw them in, and I don't know if you're familiar with that story.
Nope.
Okay. Story time.
Okay.
Peter Rabbit gets covered in tar and sticky stuff, stealing from the farmer. And the farmer catches him. And then the farmer's like, what should I do with you? I'm going to kill you. And the rabbit's like, you know what's way worse than death? If you threw me in that briar patch over there. He throws him in, and the briars just pull all the tar off him, and he just gets away squeaky clean. It's just that type of thing, but in reverse, where Babylon is saying, look, if you build a strong family, it's just going to go way over nepotism and other silly things like that. You see this in every single business advice of don't work with family. You can't pass your business on to your family. Just everyone's got to make it on their own. Families never work. They don't stay together. Why would they have to message so much of that in culture if it was true?
Yeah, that's exactly the point that I was going to go into, is that it's something that is consistently said over and over and over again, and these messages have to be pushed in every single aspect of society to give you the belief that these things are the way that the propaganda says that it is. And they wouldn't be having to push this over and over and over again in every single aspect of the world if it was true, and then if it wasn't important. Because if you don't have this messaging and you do actively make a choice of rejecting it, then you can have all of the things that are actively disincentivized by society, which also just fundamentally just goes into the purpose of a system is what it does, in that the outcomes that we have to where everybody is a alone, isolated individual, that families are broken apart, that there is no common connection and camaraderie between generations. That is the purpose of the system, and that is the active goal of it. If it wasn't, then every single aspect of society wouldn't be going towards that direction.
Yeah, I think this is one of the biggest things you have to understand from the whole fakery thing that we talked about way early on. If one thing's fake, it's all fake. Every time you're looking at something, you're going, here's a study that shows blah, 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 families don't work. It's fake. Stop believing this. The very nature, like you said, that they have to push it at every angle proves unequivocally that that is their worst fear. So if you want to strike back at Babylon, and if you want to do the best you can to be strong and unmoved and actually enact your will on the world, you have to build a strong family. That means making a plan. And that means plan doesn't have to be complex either. Simple goals. And what you'll find is even the simplest of goals require big changes in your behaviors. Not necessarily big changes in terms of like, oh, just got to like throw the TV out the window and that'll fix it. No, but a subtle change in how you actually process the world, how you allow it to enter into your family is going to make all the difference. And you're going to be able to be much, much stronger in 50 years, 100 years, or 1,000 years.
Yeah, and you can see examples of this to where there are families that are strong and families that are steadfast today. If you actually do choose to go outside and look for them, that the current generation that is living a life that the great great grandparents would say, yeah, like they're given a crash course, a rundown of how modern society is like. And after they have their, John being explained, Revelations moment, after they have that and they're like, okay, all right, this is what the world is like. Yeah, I'm perfectly happy with how the family is like. There are examples to where that happens. And when those examples can happen, why can't you be the start of that?
Yeah.
You absolutely can be the start of that. And that's not to say that it's easy. If anything, it is the hardest thing because we don't have much to inherit. We don't have any clan system, any strong connections, any strong family, which is why if we want there to be any structure at all and not simply just fall to the whims of the world, we need to do the harder decisions and the harder effort to actually create these things from scratch.
I think something that probably a lot of people don't understand or don't realize just because the world we're living brought up to believe that America is the greatest country and that, at least if you're in America, I should say.
Mhm.
Other countries kind of buy into this too, though. America's just the greatest, the land of opportunity and all this, yada, yada, yada. But one thing that is kind of the dirty secret of the underbelly is that between the years like 1955 and 1975 were the most prosperous years that we have ever recorded in human history, specifically in America. What I mean by that is it's the only time in history where you could get a job, any job, and not simply survive, but build wealth, meaningful wealth that could last generations. And this is something that's kind of accepted by modern historians that, yeah, this time period, 55 to 75, just blows everything else out of the water. We've never seen wealth accumulation like this. You just go to work and you just become a wealthy land-owning individual.
Yeah,
It's
you work
never happened.
You work the most simple, basic job whatsoever, and then you can buy a house that is it just 100x's in value. Not literally 100x's, but basically.
It's just crazy. And so we're past that. You can't get that ever again, and you never had that before. And the reality is that how that wealth was accumulated, and I'm not going to get into the specifics of it now, but there is an episode where we're going to talk about this, is that it was stolen from future generations. That's how that was accomplished. And the whole point of that was to encourage a decadent Western civilization where throwing things away is the norm, where people just have no need for family because every single person that's born is a super wealthy landowner. So then there's no need for a family. If everyone can just go and buy a huge piece of property and be completely self-sufficient, independently wealthy, then that kills the entire concept of the family. And that's where we live today, and that idea.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that like strength begets strength, momentum begets momentum. All you need is one generation or two generations, whatever, a very small subset of time to where you break those traditions, you break those bonds. And as soon as it's broken once, it's gone forever. Like it doesn't transfer from, grandparent to grandchild.
Right.
So in that sense, once it happened in that one singular sense of creating a society to where people don't need families to thrive, then all of a sudden, it will just take whatever generation chooses to make the decision to rebuild this back up from scratch in order to get any change. Because otherwise, it is just going to be a continuation of the idea that family isn't important.
Right. And so this is where we come into this as, millennials or Gen X, really even, or Gen Z alphas, entering in where the philosophy is do your own thing, be your own person, and if you can't make it, you're lazy. Because, anyone could just build wealth. That's the philosophy of the age, but the reality of the age is you need family to make money. You need family to be close. You need family to support you. And that's where your wealth is in building the family and building those connections, building strong beliefs and systems of belief that are enabling you to actually enact your will. And since we have the clash of the two, it's really important that these things be stated so that people don't have the hiccup of, oh, I guess I'm supposed to go out on my own and then come back to my family or something. You don't need to leave your family to make wealth. That has never been the case. And the only reason that people did that in between the 50s and the 70s is because it happened to be convenient and they were very, very selfish. That's the only reason they would leave their families.
Yeah, they had the ability to do so, which is a very anomalous thing that doesn't happen. That's not a real thing. And then all of the media was telling them to do this thing and that this was a good thing to do. And then because it was the easiest path, it was the path that everybody took. And so that was the strongest mechanism and weapon to sort of completely destroy the connections, which is also in a sense of it had to be that two-pronged attack to where it both had to have the capability and to implant the desire and the idea that this was something that was good and easy and the right thing to do. Whereas if people understood in that moment that family is still very important, then it could have just been a point of even bolstering your family even more.
It was a risky play by Babylon, to actually be honest, because they have to get people to abandon family, and then they have to give them the wealth of the next couple of generations. And if they don't abandon family, then it's just like getting a lump sum at one time that then just makes all these families super strong.
Yeah, exactly. So it's also, they wouldn't take that risky play if they didn't know that it was going to be efficacious.
Yes, this is true.
So in that sense, they were very confident that they would be able to enact their will. And it also just is of the idea of, this is something you'll just commonly see is the boomers and older people, is that their relationship with screens and their relationship with discerning what is true and what is not, the level of skepticism that they would have on aggregate for media is the lowest that there is, because they existed in a society that is, to some degree, higher levels of trust, and they did have that family structure at one point, and then just put them in a situation of, okay, I just generally trust things, and then here's this new thing, I just trust it all the same. So in that sense, they didn't have the defenses, and they weren't even aware that these things could even be enacted upon them, because like fundamentally moving pictures, you treat them as if they are real life. Your brain doesn't really have any way of discerning Iron Man versus somebody that you've known for 12 years when he dies.
Yeah, it's a pathetic insight into human psyche that you can be so drawn into a character that's not even like a likable person, and when they die in the movie, you're like, oh, a piece of me died too.
Yes, and so in that sense, everybody was kind of born in the best age for them to be born in. And in this sense, we are in the position to where we can be aware of these weapons of the enemy. So it wasn't until we've had enough repetitions, enough understanding, enough data points to understand what are the tools that are being used against us for us to be able to fight back. And so now that we do have enough to say what is fake and what is real, now we actually have the ability to fight back and the ability to enact what we want and what will we want, which has been, it's been real.
It's been real.
That could have been such a better transition, such a better outro.
Yeah, I got you. Lit me out. Just lit me down just a little. It's such a great setup.
It was an amazing setup, but a poor finish. But alas, next time will be better.